First off, I want to start off by saying that I know it's been a minute since I uploaded on this channel, like a very long time, and I apologize for that. I continuously make the excuse that it's because, of work or things that are happening, and it's a bunch of things all at once. So without going into too much, let's just get on with it. So today we will be talking about a film that really connected with me in a way that I never thought a film could. You may be wondering, what film may that be? And to that, I just want to read something out for you. Have you ever loved someone so much that you couldn't love them, that you felt stuck, so stuck that loving them made you hurt yourself more? That if you loved this person, you would not only ruin their lives, but basically your life as well. The kind of love that gives you butterflies whenever you think about them, the kind of love that never ceases to leave a smile on your face, the kind of love that's painful, so painful that you felt stupid enough to love them, stupid enough to let them hurt you, stupid enough to hurt them, so stupid that you couldn't stop loving them and they couldn't stop loving you. This is your name engraved here in 2020. So I've seen this film maybe, I want to say like 5 times, and on and off, like watching a few clips here and there. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Like watching some of my favorite scenes and my favorite interactions and things like that. But every time I've like watched it from beginning to the end, it's a pretty long movie. Like, I believe it's like almost 2 hours, or it is 2 hours long, 2.5 hours, something like that. It's long. It's on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, feel free to watch it if you haven't. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, though. It was pretty popular in 2020. Anyway, but I grew this sort of attachment to the movie. It's a BO. If you haven't realized that, that's basically what I review here. I do want to stray out and review other things. So anyway, and I don't want to say my feelings for this or about this drama are complicated, but they kind of are. Like, anyway, let's just talk about a little bit of the story. It has been a minute since I have seen it, but the story is still in my mind. I haven't like completely forgot everything. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. There are 2 main characters. One is Jiahan, which is like his nickname, and there's another guy, his name is Bote. They're, I believe they're high school students, or like university students, or they're students in a school. And they are both a part of a band, right? If I didn't mention, it's a Taiwanese drama, and it's like, it's based during the whole, it's near the end of martial law in Taiwan. So yeah, and they have a very interesting dynamic. So they first, interact with each other when the band instructor, he's talking about how when he first fell in love and how you'll know when you're in love because the first thing that happens is you two make eye contact. And with him saying that, Jiahan and Bote, they look at each other and they kind of smile, and it's like a really cute moment. And throughout like the first like hour of the movie, it's just like their adventures, them coming to know themselves and coming to know their, you know, identity and that type of thing. There's one of my favorite things that happens within the film is that there's the present time, like, you know, the present time of like them two together, but then there's these interactions between Ahan and the band instructor, who also happens to be the pastor at the local church. There's, and this is like one of my favorite scenes in the movie, where they kind of have these very powerful interactions with each other. Basically them talking about Ahan's identity, right? But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So, you know, Ahan and Bote, they kind of continue their relationship, right? I used air quotes there. And what ends up happening is Bote starts to like date this girl at the school, right? And Ahan, he finds out about this after they were practicing like some things with the band, where they're like after they end up practicing, they end up like losing or getting disqualified from like this competition or whatever, and they both run out along with the girl. She says to Birdie, she says, "No one else understands you but I do." And Ahan, he kind of like looks over at Birdie, and then he like runs away like screaming and shit, right? And then they're all together, you know, eating food at this like little, you know, place. And then, you know, he's clearly upset, and he gets up and he starts playing this video game. And then he turns to look at them because, you know, they're like sharing an earbud together and listening to music. And I'm pretty sure it was a song that him and Ahan used to listen to. And Ahan, he turns around and he says, "Are you two, you know, in a relationship?" And that's when he realized it. And there's like a really sad montage. It's sad, but like it's played out to be like cute or like kind of wholesome, because Ahan is like sad while Birdie is like, you know, living it up or whatever. And as this is happening, Birdie and Ahan start to stray apart, but kind of become disconnected from each other, because Birdie being in this relationship with this girl, but then he's still continuously trying to, you know, be with Ahan. There's this interaction where Ahan is at the church. He's like praying, basically, you know, asking, you know, like, "Oh, why me?" All that, right? And Birdie, he walks in, and he basically kind of like starts to tease Ahan and saying like, "Oh, I pray that Ahan is able to get a girlfriend so he can stop hanging out with me," you know. And Ahan is just like, "Why are you trying to tease me? You know, like, why are you trying to get under my skin?" And there's like a bit of, tension between them, and a bit of a fast forwarding. This movie is just, there's so much that I want to say, and I don't want to like waste like 40 minutes of your time like talking about this, but I can literally talk about this movie like for hours. I can talk about this movie. There's too much to like do in terms of like reciting the story, but essentially, right, all this conflict and tension between them builds up to this moment where Birdie and his girlfriend, I can't remember her name at the moment, I'll put it in the video, I just can't remember her name at the moment, them two end up getting into trouble because they're in a relationship, and the way that the school is set out is the girls are on one campus and the boys are on another, and one of the higher ups of the school mentions this is because the boys and the girls, they have really bad puberty, so they're trying to prevent certain things from happening, and they so they both get into trouble. The fucked up thing is that Ban, that's her name, Ban, she ends up getting expelled, and Birdie, he ends up getting I think he just got like his punishment wasn't as bad as Ban. So basically it leads up to Ahan and Birdie in the the office talking to the principal, and basically Ahan, he starts saying that he's the reason for this, he's the reason because he was trying to he was the one who had an affair, he's the one who was trying to mess with Ban, right? It's not explicitly said that that's what he meant, but like that's what he meant. And this proceeds to a altercation between Birdie's dad and Ahan, and also Ahan and Birdie, because they're like yelling at each other and like pushing each other, right? And Birdie says something on the lines of like, why are you trying to involve yourself? This is my affair, blah, 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 right? So if you remember, I mentioned that there were these kind of scenes that would play in between like the story itself. And these scenes, like I said, were between Ahan and the father of the church. His name is Father Oliver. And it was conversations between them talking about him being gay or whatever, right? Like I said, literally, if you don't want to watch anything else in this movie, just watch the scenes between, specifically like when Ahan is like getting his wounds, nurtured by the father. After the fight between Ahan and Birdie, Father Oliver, he takes Ahan, to his office. He starts, taking care of his wound and whatever. They begin, and this is, like I said, this is like splices of this conversation cut up, right? We're in between the story, but now we're actually caught up to this part where they're talking together. Basically, it leads up to Father Oliver telling Ahan that he doesn't want him to, ruin his life because of love, right? And Ahan's like, oh, how do you know that he doesn't love me? I know he loves me. I know he cares about me. And Father Oliver says, that's not love. You can't force him to love you if he doesn't, right? I have here in my notes that this is probably one of my favorite one-liners. It's not a one-liner, but it's like a sequence in this, right? This scene. I wish I could play it, but I'm just going to read out what he says because I wrote it down here. Ahan says with a smile, "Help me go to hell then. I'd rather go to hell now. Don't all homosexuals deserve to go to hell? Maybe more people will understand me in hell. Make it easy for me and help me go to hell. Father. Father." And then he goes, Jiahan, and then, and I mentioned that Ahan was so confused, is so confused and hurt that he would rather experience an eternal, torture in a place where he believes that people will understand him more, rather than live with people who don't accept him for who he is. And I find this scene to be very important because it not only talks about how religion can really taint our perceptions of ourselves, because literally he's so hurt and in pain that he would rather, die than experience a full life without a care. So it's very important that they put this scene in because I think it was really well done. Anyway, so as they're talking, right, one of Ahan's friends walks in and he says, "Oh, you need to go home or whatever." And Ahan is like, "Oh, I don't want to go." And he's like, "Well, Birdie is there." So he gets up and he runs home. And when he gets there, he looks over at Birdie. He's like, "Why are you here? Like, what do you want from me?" Right? And he tells Ahan, he's like, "Oh, I'm here because I want to tell your parents that, about the affair having to do with me and not you," right? And Ahan is like, looking at him, and he's like, "What do you want me to do? What do you want?" Right? And his mother, Ahan's mother, is like, "Oh, it's okay, you'll find a girlfriend, don't worry about it." And Birdie, the asshole, he goes, "Well, I don't know if Ahan will be able to get a girlfriend." And this is another scene that I really love. Not for in terms of oh, it's so cute, no, because it's real and raw, right? So Ahan looks over at Birdie and he's like, why do you care if I get a girlfriend or not? What is this? Why does it concern you, right? And Birdie, once again, being an asshole, he's like, who's not so tough now, right? As he says, it's low, in his face. And Ahan, he turns, he looks at his mom, and he goes, "Mom," and then he looks at his dad, and he goes, "Dad." He says, "I wasn't in an affair with a girl," right? He said, "I was in an affair with," and then Birdie stops him, and he was like, "Jiahan," and he says his full name. He's like, "Just leave me alone," right? And then Ahan goes, he's like, "You dare say who you like?" He said, I dare say who I like. Do you dare? Do you dare say who you love?" Right? So, if you're not catching on, it's essentially Ahan coming out, right? Birdie basically says that he just wants Ahan's leaving him alone. So he ends up running out of the house, Ahan, and he gets on his bike and they start running away, right? Like literally, he's just like lost it. So he's like running throughout the streets of Taiwan. He gets on a train and he starts like going as far as he can, and like they're literally on this random island, and Birdie, he's like, how long are you gonna like run from this, right? And he's like, as far as I can, as long as I don't have to see you, essentially is what he says. So this like leads up to them like being at this beach, and they're talking to each other, and then in once again in like a not like a flashback, but like a thing where he's like talking to the father. He's like, and that was like the last time that they saw each other, because at that moment they knew that they couldn't be together, right? Because of their circumstances. Now at this point of the movie, like I said, this is like an hour and a half in, where we fast forward like I think it was like 20 years, 10 years, 30 years. It's been a minute. Yeah, 20 years. It fast forwards 20 years, where Ahan is older, right? He ends up visiting Father Oliver's partner's house. Now, when he gets there, well, actually before that, he's in Paris to for Father Oliver's funeral, because he passed away, and he ended up going to his partner's house, and surprise, surprise, Father Oliver's partner was a guy, and they have like this candid talk about love, and how Father Oliver was like really scared of the relationship, right? Now, for like the next like 30 minutes, we're seeing Ahan in Paris, looking kind of lost and whatever. And then he's at his bar. It happens to be a gay bar, or a queer bar, I guess. And he's like having a drink, whatever. And then he looks behind him, and he just kind of like stares for a second at this person who's like sitting down at the table, and he's like, huh. So he grabs his drink, and then he looks back again, and then they're still like typing on the computer, and there's like this like look in his eye, and he's like, huh, right? So he ends up leaving that day, and then the next night he comes back again, and then in hopes of seeing this person again. So again, he's like waiting, and he's waiting, and he's waiting, and then he turns around and he sees this person get up to for a phone call, and then they walk outside, and he walks outside with them, and he's just like, huh, okay. And then when he walks back in, they're gone. So he's kind of sad and whatever, and he's like leaving the bar, and then he's like looking into this shop, and as he's looking into the shop, he feels somebody tap his shoulder, and guess what? It's Birdie. You probably guessed that already, because I was kind of making it kind of obvious. So it's Birdie. 20 years later, they start catching up with each other. It's like really cute, like middle-aged gay shit. It's adorable. And as they're catching up with each other, Birdie, he looks over at Ahan, and he says, I really did love you back then. Like I really did. And Ahan just kind of stares at him, really somberly. And Ahan goes, he was like, well, he essentially says, do you dare say what you are now? He's like, times are different now. It's 20 years in the future. Like, everyone is so much more accepting to everyone. Like, way more than they were in like the 70s and 80s, right? Way more. And he just kind of stares at him, whatever, and then they start walking, and they get to this hotel, and then Birdie's like, "Oh, so where's your hotel?" And then Ahan's like, "Oh, this is my hotel." And he's like, "Okay, well, Wan An," and I I um I didn't forget to mention this, but I wanted to mention it now because it's really cute. So in the film, there was this part where Ahan and this girl were on a date, right? And they're like walking with each other, and then she says to Ahan, he's like, "Okay, so I have like this really cute acronym that I want us to use, and he's like, "Okay," and she's like, "Oh, I want to say Wan An," and he's like, "Good night," and she was like, "Nope, she's like, "I want to break down each letter to you." She says the W stands for Wo, which means I or me. The A stands for I, which means love. N stands for Ni, which means you. So it's like I love you. We love each other is essentially what the thing means, right? So they're going back and forth, saying one onto each other. And then the camera pans down to Birdie, and he starts walking away. And then Ahan like runs back down the stairs and like taps him. He's like, let's like walk a little bit, right? And now this is the part where I when I first watched it, I will never forget how I felt when I first watched this movie. Like, never in my life will I forget how I felt. Because when it got to this part, right? So they're walking together, them like 20 years later as like, middle-aged men. And then they pan over and they see themselves as like youngsters running around without a care, right? And it's essentially that, this them as their younger selves, being cute. And then Ahan starts to sing the song that he made for Birdie all those years ago, right? Well, all those years ago, it's technically them, but it's not them. You get it. And he starts singing basically the theme song of the movie, right? And it was so wholesome to see that, right? And that's basically how it ends, where like they're singing the song together and frolicking around in the fields and shit. Probably one of the best, like, not even just like BL films, but like one of the best like stories, because it doesn't have like a lot of comedy in it. I don't want to say it's like very serious, but it's like it takes its plot devices serious, right? It's pretty fluffy, I would say. So if you're into fluff, then you'll probably like the movie. It just left me, the first watch, it left me feeling a little empty because I was like, what does this mean, right? But now that I've seen it like 4 or 5 times now, I like to believe that Birdie and Ahan are like living, like, obviously in the story, are like living, like on like I don't know, like a home together, and they have like a bunch of pets, and they're just living and loving together. That's what I like to think. Now, obviously, I'd like to say that the best parts of this movie were Birdie and Ahan and their interactions, whether it's good or bad, for sure, like for a long shot. There was a bit of homophobia in the film, and when it comes to that in BL films, I feel like it has to make sense. Don't just put homophobia in the film or in the show just for shits and giggles, right? It makes sense for there to be homophobia, like intense homophobia, to be in this film because it happened in the 80s in Taiwan. So I mean, put 2 and 2 together, right? The only like annoyance I have with it is the fact that we really don't see Birdie's point of view. And I don't just mean just like his side, like seeing more scenes with him, but I mean like literally through his eyes, because basically the film is playing out through Ahad's eyes, and we see a little bit of a glimpse of what Birdie is going through, when there's like this call that they have together, which that was hard to watch. But I really wish there was a little bit more of seeing his point of view and what was going on in his head, because they mainly portrayed Birdie as just being like this really goofy, playful, kind of carefree character. And he essentially was that, but he, underneath all that, was very broken, essentially, like Ahan was. I usually don't like to rank like films like super high, and as I mentioned in my previous reviews, that I rarely give a movie like less than like an 8, because for me, in my eyes, because I accompany like literally everything that has to do with the film or the movie. That's the same thing, the film or the show, or the series or whatever, is that to me it has to do with the acting, the sound design. People tend to like leave this out in terms of the discussion of like movies and shows, of like how important it is to have a very sensible and a sounds and music that makes sense to the scenes of the thing, right? And like it's the scenery and the way it's edited, and even just like the way it's color graded, because I mentioned, well, I didn't mention, but I mentioned now that the way that the movie was like color graded, it's very green, it's very yellow and very green. I'm not particularly sure what that could mean. It could it could just mean like they're trying to give off the vibe that it's like was filmed like decades ago. If so, I get it. I do want to like talk about a little bit of what I saw some people say about this movie. I saw some people say that it's the love story with no love, and I'm not really sure where they're getting that. I don't where like the love story with no love. Did you watch the movie? Like, do you expect every love story to be like, oh, cute, ooh, I love you, senpai? Like, every story is not like that. This story had to be serious because, like I said, of their circumstances that the characters were in. They literally specifically said in the synopsis, in 1987, as martial law ends in Taiwan, Jiahan and Birdie fall in love amid family pressure, homophobia, and social stigma. That is the plot. The plot is not, ooh, I love you, senpai. The plot is, ooh, I love you, senpai, but fuck society. Like, that's the thing here. I also wanted to quickly mention that since these two were in like a band, the sound engineers, they love to use like little trumpets whenever like certain important scenes were happening, mainly like the sad ones or like the really emotional ones where there's like good emotions or bad emotions. They incorporated like a lot of band like instruments like trumpets and trombones and stuff. Great stuff. Anyway, out of 10, I would give this, that's my impression of a drum roll, 10 out of 10. I know I shouldn't be giving this like, based off of what I said, I should be giving it at least like a 9.7 or something like out of 10. But for me, the good outweighs the bad, right? For me personally, it outweighs the bad, because I can look past the fact that I don't really see Birdie's point of view, and I can look past the fact of that's basically it. That's my main like gripe, is we didn't really see Birdie's like intense point of view, because like I said, it was mainly through Ahan, right? And okay, maybe this was because Ahan actually mentions the reason why Birdie is called Birdie is because there's this book where one of the characters' named is Birdie in the book, and he is like really crazy and he acts without reason. So maybe that's why. But I still wanted to see his point of view. Anyway, that is my longer view of Your Name Engraved Herein. One of my favorite, not even just like BL films, period, that I've seen in like the past year. I did kind of, take my time with watching this film, but definitely good job to Edward Chen, also the older versions as well, Leon Day, and I'm not really sure how to pronounce your name, sir, I'm sorry. The man who played Birdie, I'll put their pictures up as well, as Jackson Wang. I said Jackson Wang, good lord, Jason Wang. Yeah, if you have any questions about the film or about me or about the channel or whatever, just leave it in the comments. I will get to you when I get to you. Peace and love.